Why do certain passages in the Bible feel more like spells than scripture? What if I told you that reading specific verses aloud at night could have unintended consequences, not blessings, but something much darker? I didn't believe it either until I experienced it myself. I was never superstitious, just your average Christian trying to do right by God. But what happened to me made me question everything, not just about my faith, but about the Bible itself. And I don't think I can ever go back to who I was before. It started last winter, a little after Christmas. I was staying in my grandmother's old house while I helped prepare it for sale. The place had been in our family for over 70 years, but nobody lived there anymore. The house was ancient, creaky, and drafty. Classic haunted house vibes, but I was mostly unbothered by it. My grandma had always been deeply religious, the kind of woman who prayed before every meal and read her Bible daily. When she passed, her Bible stayed on the bedside table in her room, its leather cover worn from years of use. One night, after a particularly long and frustrating day of cleaning, I decided to pick it up. I'd been feeling disconnected from my faith lately, and something about holding her Bible felt comforting. I wanted to feel closer to her, maybe even to God. I opened it at random and began reading aloud. It was a passage from Psalms, something about seeking refuge in the Lord. The words felt heavy, not in a bad way, just full of meaning. I read a few more verses before setting the Bible down and going to bed. That's when it began. At first I thought it was just a vivid dream. I woke up, or thought I did, to the sound of footsteps outside my bedroom door. Slow, deliberate footsteps, like someone trying not to be heard but failing miserably. The kind that make your stomach clench and your breath hitch without even realizing it. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening as the steps grew louder and then stopped, right outside the door. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence. Then the door creaked open, just a crack. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My eyes were glued to the darkness beyond the doorframe, and then nothing. No one came in. The door didn't move again. After what felt like an eternity, I forced myself to get up and check. The hallway was empty. I told myself it was my imagination, that the house was just old and settling, and went back to bed. But I didn't sleep well. The next day I brushed it off as exhaustion. I didn't think about the Bible or the passage I'd read until that evening, when I found myself inexplicably drawn to it again. I told myself it was just nostalgia, a way of feeling connected to my grandmother, and flipped to another random page. This time it was from the Book of Job. I read aloud again, something about God's wrath and testing one's faith. The air in the room felt heavier as I spoke, like the words were more than just words, like they had weight and intention. That night, the dreams, or whatever they were, got worse. I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was faint at first, just barely audible, but as I strained to hear it, the whispers grew louder. They weren't in English, or at least not any English I could recognize. The voices were layered, overlapping, and coming from all around me. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside my head. I don't remember falling back asleep, but when I woke up the next morning, I felt drained, like I hadn't rested at all. I stopped reading the Bible at night after that, but the strange occurrences didn't stop. Doors would open and close on their own. Lights flickered, even though the wiring in the house had just been updated. I started hearing faint knocks on the walls, always in threes, always at night. I told myself it was just the house settling, but deep down, I didn't believe that anymore. Things came to a head about a week later. I was in the basement, sorting through boxes of old family photos, when I came across a stack of handwritten notes tucked into the back of one of my grandmother's photo albums. They were prayers, or at least they started that way. But the further I read, the less they seemed like prayers and the more they seemed like something else. They referenced summoning spirits and binding enemies, invoking God's name in ways that felt more like commands than pleas. My stomach turned as I realized these weren't just random notes, they were instructions. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just my grandmother's way of coping with her grief after my grandfather died. But then I saw the last page, written in bold, shaky letters. "Do not read aloud after dark." My blood ran cold. I thought about the passages I'd been reading, about the strange occurrences that had started after I opened that Bible. Had I accidentally done something? Invoked something? That night, I locked the Bible in a drawer and resolved not to touch it again. But it didn't matter. Whatever I'd done, whatever I'd called, wasn't going to leave me alone. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of scratching. Long, slow scratches like fingernails dragging across wood. It was coming from inside the room. My chest tightened as I scanned the darkness, searching for the source. And then I saw it. In the corner of the room, just barely visible in the moonlight, was a figure. It was tall and thin, its limbs impossibly long, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its eyes, or what I thought were eyes, were hollow, empty sockets that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching me. I couldn't look away. My body was frozen, my mind screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. And then, slowly, it raised one long, bony hand and pointed at the drawer where I'd locked the Bible. The message was clear. It wanted me to open it. I don't know how I found the strength to move, but I did. I grabbed my phone and bolted out of the house, not stopping until I was in my car with the doors locked. I drove to a motel on the other side of town and stayed there for the night. The next morning I called a priest and explained, well, most of it. He agreed to come bless the house. When we arrived, the priest immediately noticed the Bible. He wouldn't touch it, wouldn't even go near it. This isn't just a Bible, he said. It's been altered. Some of these passages have been rephrased, repurposed. This isn't scripture, it's ritual. He performed the blessing, but when he left, he told me I needed to get rid of the Bible, that it wasn't safe to keep in the house. I didn't need to be told twice. I drove to the nearest church and left it there, hoping they'd know what to do with it. But even after it was gone, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still with me. I moved out of my grandmother's house a week later and never went back. To this day, I don't know what I unleashed or why it targeted me. All I know is that the Bible is more than just a book, it's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for harm. Be careful what you read, and even more careful what you say aloud. Some words are meant to be spoken, but others are better left unsaid. I thought it was over when I left the Bible at the church. I convinced myself the nightmare had ended, that whatever I had stirred up in my grandmother's house had been silenced. For months, life was blissfully normal. I moved into a new apartment across town, started a new job, and even began attending a local Bible study group. I didn't tell anyone about what had happened. How could I? It was too bizarre, too unexplainable. But then, a month ago, something happened that pulled me right back into the darkness I thought I'd left behind. It was a Sunday evening, and I was settling into bed when my phone buzzed with a notification. The message was from an unknown number. All it said was, "You left something behind." My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, my mind racing through possibilities. It had to be a scam, right? Or maybe someone from the church had found the Bible and wanted to return it. But I'd left no identifying information when I dropped it off. No name, no number. My heart thudded as I typed out a cautious reply. "Who is this?" The response came almost immediately. "Look under your bed." I froze. The air in the room seemed to thicken, pressing down on me like a suffocating weight. Slowly, I leaned over the edge of the bed and peered into the darkness beneath. At first, I didn't see anything, but then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw it. The Bible. The same Bible I had left at the church, sitting there as if it had never left my possession. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the Bible and hurled it across the room, the sound of its heavy cover hitting the wall, echoing in the silence. My breaths came in short, shallow gasps as I backed into the corner, staring at the book as if it might spring to life. And then, as I watched, it began to open. Slowly, deliberately, the pages flipped on their own, stopping somewhere near the middle. I wanted to run, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. Written in bold letters across the open page were the words, "You can't escape." I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out because when I woke up it was morning. The Bible was gone. I hoped it was some sort of twisted dream. But then I noticed something on the nightstand. A single page, torn from the Bible, with a passage I'd never read before. It wasn't scripture. The words were written in that same shaky handwriting I'd seen in my grandmother's notes. The binding is complete. The door is open. Since that night, things have been escalating. The whispers are back, louder and more insistent. Shadows move in places where there shouldn't be any. And last night, I saw it again. That figure from my grandmother's house. It was standing at the foot of my bed, its hollow eyes locked on mine. But this time, it wasn't alone. There were others, 3 figures, all identical, all staring. I don't know what they want. I don't know how to stop this. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. When I looked closer at those hollow eyes, I saw something. Not emptiness, but reflection. And in their reflections, I saw myself, holding the Bible, reading aloud, smiling. I can't shake the feeling that whatever I summoned didn't just follow me, it's becoming me. And if that's true, then maybe the Bible wasn't a curse after all. Maybe it was a key to something far worse than I ever could have imagined. I've started hearing a voice, faint but growing stronger, repeating the same phrase over and over. Pass it on. I think I understand now. This isn't just about me, it's about you. If you've read this far, if you've let these words into your mind, then maybe the door isn't just open for me anymore. Maybe it's open for you too.